The recent conviction of Trump campaign staff and leader Paul Manafort last week uh, represents perhaps one of the most unpleasant and negative and egregious manifestations of unequal justice in the United States, inasmuch as you can take his conviction by a very sympathetic judge, T.S. Ellis, who had the federal guidelines to charge him from uh, 19 to 24 years and gave him 47 months instead. Uh, the judge showed the kind of compassion that one would get from a golfing buddy or a fraternity member or a country club pal instead of a judge that's executing the law. Inasmuch as this same judge, Judge Ellis, when he had an African American, Congressman William Jefferson from the impoverished city of New Orleans, a black member of Congress who had also committed, as Paul Manafort had, a series of financial crimes and corruption, uh, sentenced him to 13 years when he had an option to sentence him up to 30. He gave him the very bottom of that, but he gave it to him in full. In the case of Manafort, he gave him far less than the bottom of the sentencing guidelines. Um, in the case of Paul Manafort, this is connected to the Mueller investigation that's looking for collusion with Russia on behalf of those who were in a Trump campaign to affect illegally and unlawfully the outcome of the 2016 election. Um, Having worked and helped the Trump campaign, I I didn't work with the Russians. I actually know Roger Stone and Dr. Corsi, and at least from my narrow exposure, nothing like this was going on. And in the case of this, two trials that have happened with Paul Manafort, there's been no evidence of Russian collusion, but there's been a mountain, a motherlode of personal corruption, tax evasion, bank fraud, uh, offshore accounts in which he's been unwilling to pay taxes. And we're not talking about a million, we're talking about in the scores of millions of dollars, witness tampering, and other things that would be worthy of a hefty sentence. And Judge T.S. Ellis, I'm sorry, made the I guess sweetheart sentencing of 47 months, whereas when he was dealing with William Jefferson, an African American male, he gave him 13 years for far less money. There are a couple of things that need to be clear here. Um, in 2 days, Judge Amy Berman Jackson is going to look at and put her sentencing, because there were two trials for Paul Manafort on the 13th of March 2019. She's going to look at his situation in as much as he is in bad health and he's about 70 years old, and look at whether the crimes that he's been convicted for here in Washington, D.C., versus the crimes he got convicted for over in Alexandria, Virginia, if he will serve uh, consecutive sentences or concurrent, and that will uh, perhaps result in more time. Uh, Judge Berman Jackson is known for being fair but tough. Having said that, Jefferson, who got sentenced back in 2009, had to be released, or at least he went into court in 2009, had to be released in 2017, was on his way to the Supreme Court. He was held too long. In the United States, we have a serious problem. We've had slavery, we've had Jim Crow segregation, we've had lynching, we've had credit redlining. We have a caste system as a descendant of people who were in Jamestown, Virginia, both indigenous. Um, the biggest fraud in this country is the idea that Native Americans all have long hair and a light skin. This is really stupid. It's fraudulent. And as a descendant of Powhatan and Piscataway and other indigenous people, this is ridiculous. It's stupid. But this masquerades as American history. But be that as it may, going all the way back in the history of this country, in particular, once they began to have large numbers of people in this country, the a system of racism was created, in particular following the Bacon Rebellion in 1676, approximately 100 years before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And this is where, over within the next decade or so, the concept of white and black, or should I say white and Negro inclusive of two groups or three groups: blacks or Africans mixed with whites, Africans mixed with Indians, and Indians were Negroes, and whites were those who were unmixed. And the sentencing and the treatment of the people was different uh, in terms of punishments for crimes, who could do certain jobs. And so, at its heart, in American society, even before there was an America, when there was the British colonies, sentences and punishments were greater for people who were these blacks or Negroes or whatever. And this continues to the day. And you can see this in how Judge T.S. Ellis was very vicious and gave 13 years to Jefferson, who had maybe $100,000, and gave 47 months, which is what, about 5 years, to Manafort for maybe $77 million. Go figure. It's like the crack cocaine and the powder cocaine. They're both cocaine, but one's associated with one specific demographic, which is black and male, and one's associated with white and male and others. Okay. There's a report called the Booker Report, first done in 2012. And it's very clear that there are disparities and inequities in sentencing, the length of sentencing, how crimes are punished vis-a-vis black men and white men. This is a fact in America. The ACLU, the Sentencing Project, the NAACP, this goes on and on, of people who understand that the law is more black men in particular vis-a-vis white men get far harsher sentences. People use drugs in basically relatively the same percentage. There's no population that's just killing the drug supply and the others not touching it. However, the people that you see arrested, whether it's marijuana, cocaine, or whatever, black men are disproportionately arrested, sentenced, and held longer than any other group. Black women are more incarcerated than white women, even though they're outnumbered multiple times. And the same thing, black men are far more likely to be incarcerated than white men. So you see this play out, whether it's white collar or whether it's your street criminal that mugs people. So, in a nutshell, the Kerner Commission report of 1967 said we're two nations, black and white, and separate and unequal. And this is most egregiously presented to us in many ways, but in particular in how our criminal justice system operates. So, Paul Manafort, who got 47 months, he'll probably only serve 24, as compared to Jefferson, who served multiple years. So that's what I have to say for you. This is Dr. Randy Short. I am a political chair for the Gone Too Far movement. I'm also lay leader for the African Orthodox Church in Washington, D.C. And today is March 11th, 2019. It's approximately, what is it? It's just a few minutes before 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, I'm done.